property always outperforms everything else, which then leads, so the myth that we're trying to bust here is that people always go towards property. Yeah. Because they think it always outperforms everything else.
Welcome to 360 Money Matters, where financial planners Billy and Andrew talk all things financial planning. This podcast aims to increase your knowledge and confidence with all things money. Each week, they will cover topics such as investing, cash flow, budgeting, saving, passive income, debt management, and much more, so you can live a life on your terms without limits.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the 360 Money Matters podcast. I'm Billy and I'm joined by my co-host,
Andrew. Bills, here we are back again, back on the audio waves and back talking about some really cool topics.
Here we are back and we love this time of the week. We always say it, week in, week out, like a broken record.
Absolutely.
But
we intro the same way.
It's the truth. It's the truth. And I'll tell you what, I say this every week as well too. This is going to be an absolute ripper of an episode.
Always a crapper of an episode. I love this one.
Yeah. This is the best one that we've done since last week.
Better than last week though, or I don't know. We rank yourself
Since last week. The best one since last week.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough.
All right. So what we're talking to people about today is the financial advice myths that cost you money. We get access to, a broad range of people and have wide-ranging conversations and hear every different angle and story and thought that you can think of. But there's some themes that ring true. So we've picked those out and we really wanted to bring those to everybody's attention because we thought that, hey, if we're listening to these and we hear them and they're constant, we're going to try and myth bust a few of these myths.
Mythbusters.
Oh, I love it.
Do you remember that? That's a good show.
Yeah. Anyway, we're going to unpack these. Andrew, the first one that we're going to start with, I'll invest when things settle down. How many times, if only we had $1 for every time we heard something like that.
Yeah. I mean, look, and this can kind of be interpreted in two ways. I'm going to take it both ways.
Yes.
It's I'll invest when markets settle down.
Yeah.
Or I'll invest when things settle down in my own personal life.
Yep.
And I think that irrespective of whichever way that you kind of view that statement, things never settle down. It just never happens. Markets are never fully settled. Your circumstances are never fully settled. Things are always happening. And because things are always happening, what I hear when I hear I'll invest when things settle down is that I am too uncertain about, a decision that I'm going to make or my current position. And so it's an uncertainty that kind of pushes people in that direction because markets are never settled. I mean, there is always something, regardless of what it is, that gives people an element of concern. And I'm going to, kind of hone in on market circumstance because that's usually the biggest one. It doesn't matter whether it's a war that's going on, whether it's, inflation is too high, whether there's a pandemic, but there is always something that causes concern in markets. And so when you're waiting for markets to settle, you're just never going to make a decision.
Yeah. And look, same goes for your personal life, right? There is always something that's going on that if you're that way inclined, you can always say, look, it's the wrong time. I'm not ready yet.
Yeah.
After this is finished, I'm going to do it. Right. So, yeah, I think it's interesting that we hear this time and time again. But the truth is, when is the right time for anything? Because realistically, you're never really ready for anything. You can always say that, hey, there's never a perfect time in anything that you do. And I think if you do that, if you wait and feel when the opportunity is perfect or timing is right or things are safe or whatever it is, the truth is the opportunity's gone and you're never going to do anything, right? It's like the old adage that we say, when's the best time to plant a tree, right? We say that time and time again. It was yesterday and the next best day is today, right? So you just need to do it. And really, if you're serious about it, hold up a mirror to yourself and be honest. You just need to start, you're probably making excuses.
Yeah. And I remember listening to a podcast, and it was a lead engineer at NASA.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that when they are 75% certain, that's a go forward position.
Yeah.
And I thought that was interesting because 75 doesn't sound like it's, all that certain, right?
Not when there's hundreds of millions of dollars on the line.
And you're talking about hundreds of $1 million, people's lives,
Yep.
everything. And they're making a decision of, okay, I can never be fully certain, but I know that, the threshold is X and that's 75%. And I'm willing to risk all of this. It's on such a larger scale with just 75% certainty.
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you think about that and you think about your own personal life and you think, okay, well, what is the impact if this decision is, not necessarily wrong, but not 100% right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's usually going to be far less calamitous than, basically not making it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Andrew, the next one we tend to hear a fair bit of, and this ties into the diversification. I thought you might. It ties into the diversification conversation that we have with people. So when we invest, we talk about, spreading your money around, not having it in one particular basket. And I think specifically it's because we're in Australia, but property always outperforms everything else, which then leads. So the myth that we're trying to bust here is that people always go towards property.
Yeah.
Because they think it always outperforms everything else.
Well, first things first.
You're wrong.
Yep. Like statistically, you're just wrong. There's no other way to say it. And you can look at, Vanguard Index chart. You can look at anything that you like, but property doesn't actually outperform everything else.
Yep.
In fact, property doesn't outperform most things. I mean, you look at share markets, whether it's Australian market, whether it's S&P, it has always performed higher than the property market. So, okay, well then the question is, okay, well then don't invest in property. That's not what I'm saying. Property is still a fantastic asset class.
Yes.
Ability to leverage, your forced saving in repaying a mortgage. But property is a very, very powerful asset class, but it's not as powerful as the people that profess the property never goes down.
Yeah.
But it's not as bad as the people that profess that the share market always outperforms the property market. It all comes down to your circumstances. It all comes down to cash flow. It all comes down to comfort levels with debt and concentration risk when you're putting all of your assets into one property. And that's why it is not a property or shares, but rather most of the time it's property and shares.
Yeah.
And it's just to what varying degree and what asset is going to be the right asset to purchase next. That's what it ultimately comes down to. Diversify as much as you can, and that's the biggest opportunity.
The other thing too associated with that is you don't want to be pegged to one asset class, because different asset classes perform differently at different points in time. And that's the reason why we talk about diversification, right? Because you don't know which asset class is going to do what in what particular market cycle. So the way that you handle, manage, and take advantage of that is that you get into different asset classes. So it's, the whole stand stuff commercial. Why don't we do both with the kid and the Mexican?
Exactly right.
The taco, right? So it's not one or the other, but we do tend to see, quite definitive views in each of the camps, I guess. Speaking of the property theme, Andrew, I'll pay off my mortgage first and then I'll invest. 30-year mortgage, 30-year time frame, doesn't leave you much time at the end.
Even if you're making some additional repayments at the end of it, but maybe 30-year time frame isn't 30 years, and maybe it's 20. Leaving yourself 10 years to build your wealth in anticipation for retirement is not a huge amount of time, and so it feels safe, but you're just delaying wealth creation. You're losing the biggest asset that you have when you're purchasing assets, and that's time in the market.
Yep.
Like being able to be in the market, the compound interest of that is far more beneficial than just paying off your mortgage, doing nothing else, and then going towards a wealth creation strategy. And so really, I think it's the same as when you're talking, and the theme in all of this is like everyone thinks in such absolutes, and so many comments are in just black and white, but really it's shades of gray. Doing a combination of both, putting money into your offset account, investing, debt recycling, doing all of those things is what leads to the most opportune outcomes. And the other thing that, maybe you don't see when you're looking at a strategy on paper that we see every day when you're sitting in front of a client, and what actually happens in the real world is, okay, if I'm just going to pay off my mortgage first, what actions and what behaviors does that usually lead to? Okay, sure, go for it. Pay off your mortgage. Great. That's fantastic. And all you've done for 20 years has been just putting money towards your home loan. Yeah. What's the likelihood that someone in their 50s that's never invested and never put any money other than just towards their mortgage completely deviates 50 years after they've been alive and says, okay, now that I'm done with that, I'm now going to start purchasing shares or ETFs or commodities, and this thing that I have absolutely no doubt because I've never fully considered it in the past. It's very, very low. I can tell you in practicality. And what most people do is they'll pay off their mortgage and then they'll just stick some money in a term deposit because that's what feels safe to them, and they never actually do anything else.
Or they buy an investment property.
And then you continue to repeat the cycle, and you get to retirement age and all you've got is one property that's delivering you, an income, which is great. That's a fixed level of income. You can't get money out earlier. You haven't, invested in any other assets. You've been investing in, going back to our earlier thing, an asset class that hasn't performed as well as other asset classes, but leads to another whole range of issues.
Yeah, and that's a really good conduit into the conversations that we have and the things that we hear around superannuation. And people go that, okay, I can't touch my super. It's locked away until, I'm old and grey, so to speak.
Forget about it.
So I'm not going to focus on it, right? But if you come back to think about the ultimate investing landscape, what is it? It's time in the market. It's dollar cost averaging. It's rules of preservation, which means that you can't stick your hand in and muck around with it too much. So what does this all lead to? And then we've got the tax environment on top of it. But what does this do? You've got an investment system where you put money in, or your employer puts money in. It's a consistent amount on a regular basis. It's taxed effectively. It's in there for your working career. Plus you can't access it. So all of the hallmarks that you need in order for wealth creation is there in one vehicle for you. And normally when you look at an investment and you plot it out, it starts off small and then compounding starts to take effect. And before you know it, you hit that J curve and it starts to increase quite aggressively the longer that the investment is around. Why you focus on that and give that some TLC, because that will generally, outside of your family home, that'll be your greatest asset. But in some instances as well, if you've given it that care and attention, it'll actually surpass the value of your, it'll be your most valuable asset essentially. So
such a missed opportunity to just not.
We see it all the time. And, I understand that you can, people say I can use that money somewhere else, or it's better off in my pocket than putting it into my superannuation and things like that. So there's an argument or a counter argument for it. But in most instances, you can't beat that as a retirement savings vehicle or a wealth creation vehicle. So I think that myth, although people can justify it in their heads, is incorrect. And it's not necessarily whether it's incorrect or not. I think where we talk to people about and where the rubber hits the road is what's the right approach for people, and probably the combination of the superannuation statement and what you were talking about last time in terms of my debt and my mortgage. What does that then look like? And then how do the two sort of work and fit together? And most of the time, it's a bit of this and a bit of that, similar to what we were talking about with diversification.
And I think, it's a really interesting point that you put when you're talking about superannuation, in that it's got all the hallmarks of exactly what you want to design an asset that was going to give people the biggest opportunity, forces it to be long-term. It, restricts being able to draw money out unless, it's COVID. Anyway, disagreement around that. it's a low tax environment. And I think that the thing that some people maybe don't understand, and it's a lack of knowledge that's out there, is just how much control you do have over your superannuation without necessarily going through, the complexities of a self-managed super fund. You can still have retail superannuation funds that buy, your favorite ETFs or shares or term deposits or anything like that. And so you still have control over where it's invested. It's not a matter of just pick a fund and let them do everything. So not giving it the time and attention just means that you're missing out on a huge opportunity. And the way that I like to talk about superannuation is, rather than saying, hey, this is a restrictive asset, it's an ability to pay your future self money and claim a tax deduction on it. And when you phrase it in that way, it really starts to, you recognize that, hey, this is something that I can use strategically as opposed to, something that's restrictive. Bills, and I want you to handle this one because I love it. Cash is safe, so I'm just going to hold on to cash.
We all love cash. We all love cash, but
Both Greeks.
Look, the truth is, cash, inflation erodes cash and its purchasing power, right? So, what does that mean in the real world or in a practical sense? It means that, the dollar or the $100 bill that you've got, or the $50 note that you've got in your pocket, will buy less in the future than what it does today, because inflation will erode that power. So there's some practical elements to hanging on to cash, but it has to get a rate of return. And we're not necessarily just talking about cash in terms of physical denomination or the banknote. We're talking about, say, cash it back. And as part of the strategies that we talk to people about, there is benefit to doing that, having the sleep test, liquidity, emergency funds, all of that sort of thing. But longer term, if you're not investing money that you've got and it's not generating a rate of return, it is losing its purchasing power and it's going backwards in real terms. You need to be able to keep up with, as a bare minimum, keep up with inflation. Otherwise, it's becoming worthless each and every year that goes past. So it does have a place in a strategy, and it could be, you've got a home loan and you've got an offset account, and the cash that you've got is offsetting the home loan. Yeah. So yes, you've got cash, but it's not sitting in your drawer, or it's not sitting in a bank account earning 1% interest. It's actually offsetting, getting 5.5% rate of return. So it plays a role. Don't get me wrong, but there's a right and a wrong way to do it. But just in terms of holding cash by itself with no further thought or consideration, really wrong way to go, because you lose your purchasing power. And we're seeing more and more of that as inflation becomes a bigger and bigger issue in our lives every day.
Yeah. And so it's not an issue I think that everyone, it's very well known, not having enough cash and not having enough money that's set aside until the rainy day. But what's not spoken about is that if you have too much, you're missing an opportunity.
Yeah,
is ultimately what it is.
Yeah. Andrew, this one here is an absolute ripper. I don't earn enough to start investing yet.
Yeah,
I can almost say that every time.
The amount of people that have ridiculous levels of income and that don't hold on to it, it's insane. And so, firstly, that I don't earn enough, and when I earn more, I'm going to start investing, is essentially you're playing into your bad habits. It means that
you're justifying it.
Yeah, I don't have a cash flow management strategy. I don't have a budgeting strategy. And yes, okay, there is going to be a percentage of people, and I'm not cognizant of the fact that yes, there are some people that physically just don't earn enough. They can't cut their expenses enough. They can't do anything in order to be able to have enough surplus income to invest. But what I'm talking about is the majority of people, whereby they don't have enough money to invest, but they've still got Netflix and Stan and Spotify and, and I'm not saying don't enjoy any of the luxuries in life and don't go out to dinner and don't enjoy yourself. But what I'm talking about is, okay, well, maybe going through a cash flow management plan, maybe making sure that I'm optimizing my budget isn't something that everybody wants to do. Cool. Start with $50 a week.
Yeah.
Start with something. because doing something is what's going to be the beginning of habits. And that's what you're trying to achieve. It's not about, okay, I've got $50 invested versus $50 sitting in my savings account. It's, the difference between the two after tax is so minuscule, it's not even worth it. What you're doing is you're creating a habit and you're creating an opportunity for this to become larger and snowball. It's $50 a week, great. After a few months, $70 a week. After a few months, $80 a week, 90, 100. And it can become bigger money, and it can snowball a lot quicker than what most people expect. And so what's more important is small, consistent investing. A lot of people will sit there and wait at, I've only got $10,000, I'm not going to start. Yeah. Yep. Okay, well, once you get to 50, taken you so long to build out 50 that you're so fearful losing that 50 that you're not going to invest it anyway. So start with 10, set a direct debit. Start with 0, set a direct debit. Like wherever your starting point is, set a direct debit and force yourself to compound, because that's what's going to create the action of putting money into investment. And that's also what's going to create the compounding interest over time in order to be able to effectively, that's the only way to build wealth.
Yeah, look, you just need to start. Yeah, that's the key, right? And if you, similar to those other reasons that we were giving, or those myths that we were talking about, you're just making excuses for yourself. And yeah, the $50 a week is not going to make a huge impact at the start when it's $50 a week, because it's only $50 a week, but you're not building, that's not the benefit. The benefit at the start is starting the habit.
Yeah.
It's like, using running as an analogy, running and starting, you're not going to, the benefit is not that you're going to be a marathon runner or that you can complete a marathon. It's that you're forming that habit. And then as time progresses, you get better and better and can run longer and longer and faster and faster. Yeah. So you just need to start. And probably the last one, Andrew, which I absolutely hate when we hear this as well too. I'm just going to follow what others are doing. So what does that mean? Maybe I've got a brother-in-law that does certain thing and he knows this and he's done really well. Or I've got, someone on the other side and she does this and I'm just going to copy her. That drives me up the wall and I absolutely hate it. Getting advice from so-called professionals that aren't professionals, that don't know, maybe they've been lucky in what they've done. Maybe they
Firehusters just go on and they tell people what to do with no
unlicensed influencers. They don't know anything about your personal situation. There's no trade-off discussion. There's no if this, then that. What are the unintended consequences? Risk tolerance, goals, tax, personal financial position, job security, debt levels, surplus income, cash management system. None of that's taken into consideration. Don't like it at all.
And it just leads to picking something that sounds nice and sporadic behavior.
Pretty much.
Yeah, going to buy gold because everyone's talking about gold, and going to buy a bit of Bitcoin because everyone's talking about Bitcoin, and put some money in some of these shares. And there's no strategy behind it. You're not investing on a regular basis. You're not actually building any wealth. All that you're doing is making yourself feel good by just acquiring these little bits of assets that actually aren't doing too much. So normally, when we are talking about something like this, and whether it's through a financial advisor, like Billy and myself, or whether you're doing this on your own, it's have a strategy behind it. What are you trying to achieve? What's your circumstances? What's your surplus income? How much can you invest? How much is going to go towards your long-term, short-term, just in case funds, your medium-term bucket that I might, what are going to be the changes? Am I going to, take time off work for a period of time? Do I have kids entering private school? Can I sustain this investment property long-term? As opposed to just, this sounds good at the moment, and that's just going to be the next thing that I'm going to try require.
And then you jump from one thing to the next.
Yeah.
Because that's what others are doing.
Exactly.
Andrew, good job.
Thanks, Bills.
That's it. To our listeners,
great podcast.
To our listeners, now viewers, for your attention, hopefully you got a whole heap of value out of that. If you wanted any more details or wanted to have a chat about your financial situation, feel free to reach out. Our details are in the show notes as always. Andrew, thank you.
Thanks, Bills. And if you haven't already, it really does help us. So please like and subscribe to the podcast, and we look forward to catching you on the next one.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening today. If you have any questions on what we talked about or would like to have a chat about your money journey, visit us at 360fs.com.au.
The information in this podcast is general in nature and does not take into account your personal objectives, financial situation, or needs. It is not financial, legal, or tax advice and should not be relied upon as such. You should consider whether the information is appropriate to your circumstances and seek professional advice before acting on any of the information provided. Past performance is not a reliable indicator of future performance. This information is provided by Billy Amiridis and Andrew Nicolaou of 360 Financial Strategists Pty Ltd, authorized representatives and credit representatives of Akumin Financial Planning Pty Ltd.